All right, good evening to a shortened post-Rabbi Loiterman meeting edition of Daf Yomi. We are sponsored for the week anonymously in merit of all of those community needed shidduch. We're going to get right to the new Mishnah on Lamed Hey Amud Aleph. The Mishnah says, "Hashochet es hazevach lechol dover she'ein darko lechol." If somebody does shchita, we're continuing on with our pigel conversation. This time he has in mind that he's going to eat something that you're not part of the korban that's normally eaten. Or lahaktir dover she'ein darko lahaktir is going to burn on the mizbeach something that normally part of the meat that doesn't burn on the mizbeach. Kosher, that's not invalidating intent, and the korban is still kosher. The Rabbi Eliezer, post-sell Rabbi Eliezer says no. But even though you're going to burn something that you eat or eat something that you burn, it is, Eliezer says that it's possible. Lechol davar shedarko lechol lahaktir davar shedarko lahaktir. Right? If he's going to eat something which you're supposed to eat and he's going to burn something that you're supposed to burn, but he has in mind pachos mi kazayas, that he's only going to do less than a kazayas of it, kosher, that's also fine, because that's not going to be enough invalidating intent. Lechol kechatzi zayas ulahaktir kechatzi zayas, kosher. If he's going to eat half of the volume that you need to be chai for pigel, and he's going to burn half the volume, that's also kosher, because he hasn't done either a full burning or a full eating. According to this, you cannot combine eating and burning. Two different things, and therefore we do not combine them in order to create a machshava of pigel. Okay, so then, hashochet es hazevach lechol kazayis min ha'or. Right? Let's say somebody slaughters the korban, and now he says, "I'm going to eat a kazayis of the skin." Umin harotev, or from the gravy that comes when you are making your korban. Umin hakipa, right? Or you're going to eat from the kipa. The kipa is the sediment that goes, the spices that settle on the bottom. Min ha'alal, the alal is the this vein. There's a sinew that's in the animal, and it is tough and difficult to eat. And min ha'atzamos, from the bones, and min ha'gidin, which is the general sinews, umin ha'kronim, or from the horns, umin ha'talafim, or from the hooves, chutz l'zman chutz l'mekomo, and he's going to eat these outside of the proper time or place. Kosher, then it is still kosher, right? Because ve'en chayav b'li mishum pigel, v'nosar v'tamei, and you're not chayav for eating those things for pigel, nosar, and tamei. They're not edible parts of the animal, so therefore not. Okay, hashochet es hamukdoshin. Now, if he slaughters it, right? He slaughters the korban, and he's going to eat lechol sholil oshilia. He's going to eat a fetus that's inside the animal when it's shechted, or he has in mind he's going to eat the afterbirth, the placenta from that animal, bachutz, and he has in mind that he's going to do it outside the proper time and proper place. Now, this is what we said: eating anything that's not edible is not going to give you intent for pigel. So the question is this edible or not? Right. So lo pigel, he has not made the korban pigel. Why? Because people find that disgusting. I don't know if everybody's taking a look. I saw some faces going, "That's sick." So yes, people do not eat that. That's gross. So therefore, if you have in mind that you're going to eat that, that's not considered edible parts and does not count. Hashochet es hamukdoshin le'echol shalil o shilia. I just read the same thing again. Hamolek es hatorin lechol beitzeim bachutz. Let's say somebody does malika on the bird, right? Malika is they would do the shechita with the fingernail. We'll describe all that process, right? They would do the shechita with the fingernail, and he has in mind that he's going to eat the eggs that are inside the bird, but he's going to eat those outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Lo pigel, that does not count, right? Because that's not part of the animal. It's not considered part of the animal. It doesn't count, right? I understand that the eggs are still inside the bird when you shechted it, but it's still a separate, distinct element, not part of the bird. Therefore, it's not going to ruin the korban. Chalav mukdoshin. Let's say he has milk from an animal. That is, he's going to drink the milk after he shechts it. He's going to drink this milk, and he's going to drink it in the wrong time or place for a korban. Ubeitze torin, or the eggs of these birds. Ein chayav alei mishum pigel. Then you're not chayav for pigel, right? Ve'nosar v'tamei, or any of these other prohibitions of nosar or tamei, they're not considered part of the sacrificial meats, and therefore not a problem. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Piga bezevach nispagel hashalil Bashalil lo nispagel hazevach. He says, look, these things are not equivalent. They don't work both ways. If you have intent to eat the child that's inside the korban, right? That's not normally edible stuff. Therefore, that's not going to ruin the whole korban. So if you had that in mind, that's not valid intent. However, if you had in mind that you're going to eat the korban outside of the right place, then the korban becomes pigul. And if you eat this fetus that was inside, that will also give you the avera, and you'll get kares for eating that. Why? Because even though it's not edible and it's not the fact of the matter is you could eat it. And if you do, you have eaten part of a korban, which is pigul. So therefore, it won't create the prohibition of korban, of pigul, but if you have already a korban that's pigul and you eat that, that's considered part of it. So it doesn't go both directions. Okay?
Oh, yeah?
Then, okay, Rabbi Elazar continues. Pigel be'alal, this is this, I don't know which, I'm going to ask my doctor, right? There's a thick vein, although you might not need it, I may need a veterinarian, right? You need a thick vein in the neck of an animal, right? There's a thick vein, I'm presuming a jugular vein or something like that. Difficult for you to be able to eat. There's some kind of a sinew in the neck that is difficult to eat. Nispaglam, right? This vein which is in the bird, nispagla mura'a, or the crop that's in the bird, right? A crop is part of the digestive systems of the bird. And lo nispagel alal. So sorry, I said this verse. Pigel be'alal. If he has in mind that he's going to eat the alal of the bird, nispagla mura'a, then you have created pigel on the crop. But the reverse, b'mura'a, right? So then he's going to think that he's going to eat the mura'a, the crop. That does not create pigul on the alal, on this neck, on this vein. Why? Because the mura'a, the crop, is considered really gross, right? And so therefore people don't eat it. Therefore, if you are thinking you're going to eat it, that doesn't create pigul intent, right? But the alal, right, is difficult to eat, but is edible, right? So therefore, if you have intent to eat that, you have created pigul, and if you eat the gross parts of the bird afterwards, then you have eaten pigul. Same idea.
What would be the gross parts of the bird?
The crop. The crop, right? I don't know exactly. I've never seen a crop, and there's a reason why I've never seen one, because it's gross. So when they sell it in the store, they don't leave that part in, right? There used to be you used to get the giblets or whatever inside. You used to open a chicken and you find the whole pieces in there. I don't know. They don't do that anymore. It's good, and I think that's a good thing. Okay, pigul. you look that up.
In the soup.
There you go. Exactly. People used to, anyway.
They call it the aponeurosis.
There you are.
The what?
The aponeurosis, only in our Daf Yomi. The answer is, it is the alal. It is the alal. That's what that is.
It's not like fricassee, right?
People used to put all chicken feet in the fricassee, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Pigel be'emurim, similarly, if he has in mind that he's going to burn the forbidden fats, so then nispalgu parim, so then the bulls, right? The whole thing becomes pigul, and you're chayav kares. But parim, right? But if he's going to if he's going to eat the meat of the parim, then lo nispaglu emurim. So then, that doesn't create pigul on the burned fats, because that's burned, not eaten. That's not normally an edible part. So therefore, it doesn't create. Right, it's like we said in the Mishnah. You're not eating something that's not supposed to be eaten. Okay, so now that's Rabbi Elazar's point, right? So it doesn't go both ways, but one could activate the pigul in the other, but not necessarily the other way. Let's say this supports him. There's an argument afterwards that the din in pigul is applicable to the korbanos that are in the machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim, whether pigul applies. It's going to come up in 8 pages or so to the korbanos that are burned inside. Why? Because the source pasuk for pigul we learned was from shlamim. So therefore, korbanos that are like a shlamim which are burned outside and are brought in the mizbeach outside and are eaten by any korban which is similar, like a korban chatas, korban ola, this rule of pigul applies to it. A korban where you are going to bring the bird inside, right? You're going to sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach. So then that's not going to apply to pigul, right? So now Vishavim, they agree. However, the Brisa says she'im chishev ba'achilas param ubisreifa son lo asafa al velo klum. That if they were going to eat from these bulls, right, from their meat and or the part that's supposed to be burned, right, then he hasn't done anything. That machshavas achila, that consideration to eat those bulls, which are not normally eaten because those bulls are completely burned, that's part of how they're done, that's not going to be considered to be effective because it's eating something that's not normally eaten. My love, so the Gemara wants to know, my love, are we not saying, though, that if he had in mind, right, just like what Rabbi Elazar said, that if he had in mind that he was going to burn the bull tomorrow, that would also create pigul on the meat, and if they ate the meat, then it would be chayav pigul, which is exactly what Rabbi Elazar says. The answer is no, don't get so excited to compare those. This is only saying that if he has intent that he's going to burn the emurin, and then he were to eat the emurin themselves tomorrow, then that would be creating the pigul prohibition. So it doesn't necessarily prove the rule. It doesn't prove he's wrong, but it doesn't prove anything. So the Gemara is going to try to bring another proof to Rabbi Elazar. Tashma, come and listen. Parman Nisrafin, Musirman Nisrafin. If you've got the bulls or the goats that are burned on the inside, right? The korban chatos on the inside on Yom Kippur. Mo'alin bahen mishehukdeshu. So they become korbanos. They become the elevated status of hektish as soon as you designate those animals for being a korban. Since they are designated, once they are designated, they then become. There becomes a prohibition on them to use them for your own personal purposes. If you use them for your own purposes, that's called me'ilah. It's a lo saseh, and you get malchus for using things that are designated for hektish. Sorry, yeah, you were going to say something or no? Okay, good. So therefore, nishchatu. So then, once now as we're going to say the elevated levels where we basically, as the korban moves along, the korban becomes elevated and more along in the sanctity. So once it becomes designated, then you can't use it anymore. Now it becomes subject to the prohibition of me'ilah. Nishchatu, once you slaughter the animals, so then hukshurli pasel bitvul yom, then it becomes eligible for being contracting tumah, right? You can't transfer impurity to a live animal, only to a dead animal. So therefore, once you shecht it, now somebody who is Tvul Yom, who has contracted Tuma, gone to the mikvah, but it hasn't become nightfall yet. So they're still in their status of Tuma, right? They are or Mechusar Kippurim, or somebody who has not brought his sacrifices. Has a mitzorah, his tzaras, right? He has the tzaras affliction. He has to bring his korban the next day. He hasn't done that yet. These people are still tameh, we learned, right? They can't touch a korban without making it tameh. Once you shecht it, it's a dead animal. Now it can receive tumah. Now, and also belina. Also, it becomes prohibited if you leave the meat overnight to the morning. Right? If once it's shechted, if you leave that meat over, that's when the time starts. Or if you've got a korban you haven't shechted yet, it can wake up the next day and still be a kosher korban, right? Once you shecht it, time starts. You can't leave it to the next morning. My lav linas basar, right? Are we not suggesting that we're talking about leaving the meat over, right, to the next day? Ushma mina, and from there we're going to see migo de pasba lina pasla bab machshava, that once leaving it over till the next day becomes prohibited, thinking about leaving it over to the next day should also be prohibited. Okay, so therefore, right? So he's had him. So we're talking about these animals that are completely burnt. So therefore, none of it is eaten. Nevertheless, we're sort of deriving from here that if he had in mind that he was going to eat the meat beyond the right time, it would still activate pigul which is in support of what Rabbi Eliezer is saying, right? He's going to eat something which is not normally eaten. So the answer is, lo, linas emurim. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that the time becomes activated that you have to burn the sacrifice before leaving it over. You can't leave it over those emurim, right? The meat is not, right? That's not going to be left over. That's not going to be invalidated by overnight because you're not eating it anyway. It's all the emurim, all the parts that have to be burnt. Now, Hamidikhtani Seifa. Now, if you look at this brisa, it says Kulan Mo'ilin Behen Al Beis Hadeshin. Ad Sheyutach Habasar. The Mishnah says, the end of this Mishnah says, that you commit Me'ilah on all of these bulls and goats that are burned and after their blood is offered inside the Beis HaMikdash. These are the ones for Yom Kippur, right? So you commit Me'ilah Ad Sheyutach Habasar until it's prohibited to get any benefit from this animal, from the carcass of the animal, until it has been burned. It had a special designated location where they would take the animal and they would burn it outside of the location. They didn't burn the animal. The burning of this animal was not on the Mizbeach. It was burned in a separate outside location. Once that animal has been singed, right, it doesn't have to be completely consumed already. Once it has been burned, now its sacrifice is complete and it's done. Me'ilah is not applicable to that carcass anymore. Okay? So, yes. Me'ilah is the prohibition of using something that belongs to the Beis HaMikdash. So right, so that's what that is. So now, Mikal Dereisha. Now, if that's the end part, this end part is talking about what happens as far as the burning is concerned. Mikal Dereisha, which means that unless you're saying something is repetitive or why, then the part before that can't be talking about the same thing, right? So therefore, if the end is talking about the parts that are burned, then the part that was talking about leaving overnight, that must be talking about the parts that are edible or things to eat. So therefore, if that has to be eaten, so then we're back to supporting Rabbi Eliezer. So the Gemara says, not so, Rabbi Eliezer, sorry. Not so, midi iria, ha kidisa, reish be'murim v'seifa basar. So he says, okay, well, wait a second. Sorry, I said that wrong. Since the end part is talking about what's being burnt is the entire carcass, including the meat. Therefore, the beginning part of the Mishnah is also talking about the meat being left over. Says the Gemara, nah, not so. The Mishnah, although we don't love to do this, could certainly be talking about different things in different parts of the Mishnah. There's no rule that says you can't do that. The first part of the Mishnah is talking about burning the emurim the next day, burning the parts that have to be burned. And then the end says that the carcass has to be burned outside. That's the meat. That's talking about the meat. But there is no such concept as leaving over the edible meat till the next day, such that you would create pigul necessarily. Okay, so now, we tried to prove him right, now we'll try to prove him wrong. Okay, so now Rabbo asks the question. That's what happens. If your opinion doesn't get proven right, eventually somebody tries to come along and prove you're wrong. So Mesiv Rabbo asks the following question. The Brisa says, Ve'elu she'ein mefalgin, ve'ein mispalgin. These are the things that there's no pigul with them, and having in mind to consume them afterwards, after the right time, is irrelevant. They're not edible parts of the animal, therefore, or they're not parts of the animal, whatever it is. You're not chai for pigul. And it says like this: Semer sheberoshe kvasim, right? If you've got wool on the head of the animal, ve'seyar shebezakin hatyashim, or if you've got the goat's beard, right? Apparently, goats have beards, right? Ve'haor ve'harotev. If you've got the skin or you've got gravy from the meat, ve'hakipa, we said that was the the sediment that was on the bottom, right? The spices and things that are at the bottom of the pot after you cook the meat from the korban. Ve'alal, which we said was that thick, I cannot pronounce it.
Aponeurosis.
Yeah, amazing how you remembered that. Aponeurosis, okay. Ve'hamora, the crop. V'atzamos v'aginim v'akronim, the bones, the sinews, the horns, v'atlofim and the hooves, v'ashalil v'ashilia, and the fetus and the placenta, and v'chelev hamukdashin, and the fats that are supposed to the udders. That's the chalav hamukdashin is the udders. That's the milk udders. Ubeitze torin, the eggs that are in the birds. Kula and lo mifaglin v'lo mispaglin. They're not really part of the animal. If you have in mind to eat those beyond the right time, you have not made the korban pigul. And if you eat them and the korban was pigul, and you eat them, vein chayv mishum pigul, you're not chayav for eating pigul. Nosar and tameh. Also, they're not considered nosar if you leave over those parts the next day. They're not leftover parts of a korban. They don't become. You're not. If you eat them while you're tameh, you haven't eaten a part of a korban that's tameh. They're not part of the korban. V'amalad b'hen b'chutz pater. And if you take them outside the Beis Hamikdash and you burn them, you have not violated the prohibition of burning parts of a korban outside the mizbeach, outside the Beis Hamikdash, because these are not part of a korban. That's the bottom line of it. Now, well, no, it's gross. Yes, but you're but you're permissible. Yeah, there's no isser, right?
These aren't things that people commonly would consume.
Correct. Not the edible parts.
Right.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, right, gelatin is made from like hooves or things, right? So theoretically, if you've got your marshmallows made from a korban, it wouldn't be a problem. It's my practical halacha of the day, right? Marshmallows made from pieces of korbanos are not usher. Okay, my love lo mifaglin hazevach v'lo mispaglin machmas zevach. Are we not proving from here? It says not pigul, so that means it doesn't make. If you have in mind, I'm going to eat these parts, like I read it, right? I'm going to eat these parts. Doesn't make the korban zeva. It doesn't make the korban pigul. And if the korban was pigul, if you eat these parts, you're not chayav. Isn't that what it's saying? Gemara says no. Don't read it like I read it. It means lo mifaglin es hazevach velo mispaglin machmas atzmon. It says they won't become pigul if you think that you're going to eat these things. You won't ruin the whole korban because they're not really part of the korban, and they cannot be. And what I was wanting to say is that if the korban was pigul, then you're not going to be liable. No, that's not true. If the korban was pigul, these will also be pigul. The issue is that if you think that you're going to eat these themselves, and then you do eat these themselves, they're not pigul, right? In other words, these items are their own little thing, right? But they are considered part of the larger animal, such that, right, as Rabbi Eliezer said, is correct that if the animal was pigul, and then you eat these, then it would be no good, right? You can't do that, so you can't eat the marshmallows, right? Can't eat the marshmallows according to this. Okay, now. Gemara says, I'm not satisfied with that answer. Ihachi, if that's true, if that's how you're understanding this brisa, hadiktani seifa. Look at the end of the brisa. We never quote the whole thing, right? Here's the end says, kulan lo mifaglin velo mispalgin hatulamali. Why does the Tana have to say that they are not creating tuma and they cannot be made? Cannot be made. They are not. Don't create pigul and they cannot be made into pigul. Right? That sounds very clear that it's saying that even if the korban is pigul, it's not pigul. So the Gemara answers, well, according to your answer, according to what you're reading this brisa, ein chayavin l'shum pigul. Why do you have to repeat? And you're saying, why are we repeating these phrases? Saying the fact that we repeat the phrase means that it means both things, right? So the answer he says back, he says, well, wait a second, right? The beginning of the brisa starts off. Ein chayav l'chav mishum pigul hatu lamali. Why do we have to keep writing it back? It's 3 times written in this brisa. 3 times. It's not pigul. It's not pigul. Why does the brisa keep repeating it over and over and over? Ella id deboy lemisna no servitame tana pigul. So rather, the only reason is because you're right. It's not really. There's no extra thing being learned from repeating the phrase. It's just that since we wanted to add in the part that you're also not liable for tuma, you're also not liable for nosar, we're going to throw in the extra fact that you're not liable for pigul as well. Hachanami. So also this is the case when it read to the second time. Id deboy lemisne hamalahem bachutz. When we're talking about also burning these things outside of the Beis Hamikdash, we're going to throw in also Tananami v'chulu lo mifaglin v'lo mispaglin, not to tell me anything new. There's no rule that's extra there, right? It's just that we threw in this extra point about you can burn them outside. So therefore, we're also going to throw in that the rule also says we're throwing in a new rule we'll mention that also the rule that we mentioned before still applies, right? It's the same thing, that they're not made into pigul. Okay, so now that is Rabbi. He takes the way he reads this brisa, right? It's against Rabbi Elazar, but it's not really clear. So we had a sort of an answer. Now Rava is going to say that he has a support. He's going to support Rabbi Elazar. Rava Amar Af Ananami Tanina. I'll show you a brisa that supports Rabbi Elazar is correct. Hashochet es hamukdoshin lechol shalil shilya b'chutz. If you slaughter a korban and you have in mind that you're going to eat the placenta or the afterbirth, placenta is the afterbirth, the placenta or the fetus, right? And you're going to do it outside of the right time or place, right? So you have pigel intention during that. Then lo pigel, then you have not violated, you've not ruined the korban, because we said that's not really part of the korban, it's not edible. Similarly, if you're going to do the malika on the bird and you're going to eat the eggs outside, that's not going to be either, right? That's also not going to create pigel. V'hadar tani, then the brisa says, chalev ha-mukdashin, right? If you've got milk inside of the udders of the animal, ubeite torim, and the eggs that are in the bird, ein chayav alem mishum pigol noser v'tamei, you're not chayav for pigol noser v'tamei. Ha shlil v'shilya chayavim. Now, what's left out of that list? The fetus and the afterbirth, which means that in those cases, there is a circumstance where the fetus and the afterbirth would create pigol. So what's going on? Elav shmami, no, we have to explain it's two different circumstances. One where the fetus and the afterbirth do matter, and one where they don't. So it has to be kan machmas hazevach, kan machmas atman. One is, if you made the whole korban pigol, then the placenta and the afterbirth, placenta is the afterbirth, placenta and the fetus are also pigol. But if you have in mind just the fetus and the afterbirth, they don't make the korban pigol, and they don't even make themselves pigol, right? Because they're not really edible items in themselves. So that is a good support to Rabbi Elazar's perspective. That sort of goes one way, but not the other. Okay, Tanan Hasam. We learned in a Mishnah over there, right, which is going to be way later on Daf Pei Daled. Bale Mumin. Rabbi Akiva Machshir Bebali Mumin, right? That if you bring, we're going to say that there are korbanos that are puzzle. When you bring them up on the Mizbeach, you don't take them down. Okay? And Rabbi Akiva says a korban that has a mum on it, right? You're not supposed to bring that korban. Puzzle korban. But if you brought it on the Mizbeach, don't take it down. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chia bar Abba says, Rabbi Yochanan lo hichshir Rabbi Akiva ela bedukin shiva'ayin. It depends on the blemish. It has to be a very minor blemish, like cataract in the eye, scratch in the eye. That's kind of blemish. Don't take that down. Hol ksherim be'ofos. Why? Because it's a minor blemish. Because if that same blemish was on a bird, that would not be a blemish, right? That's only a blemish by an animal. Therefore, leave it on the mizbeach. Vehu shekodam hekdeshon es muman. Also, it has to have been that it was made hektish first before it developed its blemish. Why? Because if it was blemished and then you tried to make it hektish, it wouldn't be fully made hektish. It wouldn't get the kedusha haguf on it because it wouldn't be eligible as a korban from its outset. Therefore, it had to be kedusha haguf first. It had to be made kodosh as a korban first, then develop the blemish. Okay. Umoda Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says also be'olas nekeva, right? Dekman dekoda muma lektesha dami. A ola only comes from male animals. See, there's rules that you can learn, and now you'll know for the rest of your life. An ola, right? It's the trick, right? Right? The if a rooster lays eggs, which side does the egg roll off on? Right? That's the same. If you've got a there's no such thing as a female. There's no such thing as a female ola. So therefore, he says it's as though the mum was pre-existing. Therefore, somebody tries to sanctify a female animal as an ola. It doesn't go up on the mizbeach because the mum existed before the animal was made hektish. Meisiv Rabbi Zera asked the question, Hamala mehen bachutz pater, right? If you are going to burn these animals outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you are exempt, despite the fact there being a prohibition of burning a sacrifice outside the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, now, so as we said, right, this is from the brisa that we had brought, the Mishnah that we had brought. No, it's the brisa, right? It was the brisa that we brought that said that if you bring the shilya and the shalil, right? If we bring from the placenta, the fetus or the placenta, right? If you burn them outside, then you're putter. So now, ha me'iman, right? If, however, right, if he burned the mother itself, you'd be chayiv. Now, the problem, because why are we telling the fetus in the afterbirth and not? It sounds like the fetus in the afterbirth is the problem, not the mother animal itself. The problem is, heichi mishkachasla. How do you have a circumstance, right? Do you have somebody burning meat from a female animal and you be chayiv? Because meat isn't supposed to be burned at all. So you wouldn't be chayiv for burning that unless it's an ola. If it's an ola, how's there a female animal that's kosher, and you're burning a female animal outside? Why would you be chayiv?
Is there a chatas that you burn outside?
You're asking if there's a chatas, you have to burn the basar, right? Because that's where the iser comes to burn it outside, because you were supposed to burn it inside. There is no the chatas, the basar goes to the kohen, so it should not be burned outside, right? The olas nekeva, so this has to be a female ola. If you hold Rabbi Akiva holds, okay, fine, a female animal goes on the mizbeach, don't take it down, so then Hamani Rabbi Akiva, and this could be Rabbi Akiva's opinion. You're not supposed to burn this animal outside. Went up, you took it out, down off the mizbeach, and you brought it outside and burned it, you'd be chayiv. Eliyah Mardim also teirade, if it's Rabbi Akiva's, if you hold Rabbi Akiva says you're supposed to take this animal down, then what are you supposed to do? Then how you have no case. So Ema Hamal Behen Bachutz Potter, we're going to say that if somebody would bring these up outside, you'd be Potter, Hameimuri Iman Chayev, but if you burn from the fats of the animal, now we can talk about another korban, right? Because you'd be burning from the fats of a female chatos, right? V'ham Mehen Katani, it says, well, from them, meaning that sounds like it's coming from the meat, right? The iman dumya didhu, right? You can't burn the fetus, which is the meat of the fetus, which means that it's going to be similar. The mother, also the meat. So ela ema hamal me'murim b'chutz pater ha me'imure iman chayev. We have to change the girsa slightly and say that if you burned the burned fats of the fetus outside, you'd be chayev, you'd be pater. Therefore, if you burned the burned fats of the mother, you'd be chayev. And this is a good place for us to stop at the Mishnah.